I'm looking at my very old picture that you have up there, and will confess to all of you that one of the outcomes of COVID is I decided I wasn't going to color my hair anymore. So what you see today is what you get, but I feel free for not having to be a slave to the salon anymore. Yes, thank you for outlining some of my credentials. I appreciate that so that people have an understanding that the work that I do as First Selectman extends well beyond the borders of our town. And I really make it a priority to make sure that through me, Darien has a voice at the regional government table and in statewide matters, which is quite important. And I'll get into that in a little bit in my talk. Some of what I will say is kind of a little bit technical, but I'll try and make it easily understandable. And I really love your questions. But first and foremost, I want to start out by saying thank you for keeping the connection and community going through COVID. It's the biggest thing that I've seen is the negative impacts of people being isolated and not being able to socially engage with one another. And I think HAYVN has been a wonderful, wonderful way for people to keep that connection going. So thank you to all of you. I'm sure that what you want to hear about first is what's happening in our COVID world. Here in Darien, we have about 1,400 cases of COVID from 900 unique households. And I report it that way every Thursday in my code reds so that people understand that transmission is really happening in small social gatherings and within homes. I happen to believe that everyone will at some point be exposed to the coronavirus in one form or another. The good news is that vaccinations are happening. Listening to the governor this week, about 45% of Connecticut's population age 16 and over has already received vaccine, which I think is remarkable. And I have to give my great respect and thanks to the governor and his team. It's easy to quarterback the good and the bad, but overall, he and his team have done a wonderful job of managing the intricacies of the COVID testing and vaccine distribution. We have clinics that go on every Wednesday and Thursday here in Darien. We are part of the vaccine management system called VAMS. So if you go into that state system, or I think it's developed by the CDC, and want to get a vaccine, when there's openings in Darien, you can choose that location if you wish. You're not limited to getting vaccine here. You can go literally anywhere in the state that has a time slot available for you. And as vaccine supply increases, those appointments will get easier to find. On April 1st, when the governor expanded eligibility to everyone 16 and over, that new category of eligibility was 1 million more people. So we ask that everybody's really patient when they're trying to get their vaccines. If you haven't gotten one already, we're certainly encouraging you to do so. I think anecdotally, everyone sees now that when you have conversations with people, they're really quick to tell you that they've gotten their vaccine. I think it's gives people a lot of comfort when they're out traveling, socializing with family and friends. So the state on a whole, we've had over 300,000 cases of coronavirus. We have 3.5 million people that live in the state of Connecticut. So you guys can kind of do the math on how pervasive this virus really is. And the sad news is that we have just under 8,000 people that have died from the coronavirus. These vaccines are really helping to limit the number of hospitalizations and the number of deaths statewide. So that's a really positive thing. We've been able to, in Darien, get vaccines to all of our teachers and school staff. We're very proud of that. A bunch of teachers had some negative side effects from the vaccine. this past Monday, so that impacted in-person school, but we are beyond that now, and we're now looking forward to when we can have some student vaccine clinics for the kids that are 16, 17, and 18 years old. We are not an alliance district, so we have to wait until May, likely, to have our student-only vaccine clinics, but that's okay. We'll make sure that we get there, and we're lining up regional partners to help us in that effort. I'm sure you've also heard that, you know, the governor has, excuse me, removed the travel restrictions. So if you travel, you no longer have to quarantine or test yourself when you come back from travel, although the CDC still recommends that you do that, particularly if you're not vaccinated. If you are vaccinated, all of those restrictions are waived for you, so certainly keep your vaccine cards handy. The governor has extended his emergency declarations and all of the executive orders that go along with that until the end of May 20th. There will be another decision point before then to see if they have to further be extended, but we're seeing now how the executive orders are beginning to be relaxed over time, and we are hopeful that in one way or another, our schools will be able to have graduations and proms, and municipalities like ours will be able to have some normalcy with regard to summer events. I will say, though, that it's hard to wait to make decisions about big town-wide events. So we have already decided that we will not be holding our annual July 4th fireworks this year. There'll be events that are planned, smaller events that are planned to help celebrate the bicentennial along with the July 4th holiday. And we're kind of in a holding pattern, deciding on whether we're going to have a Memorial Day parade. I don't think it's going to be able to be a traditional parade, but we had a really nice celebration last year, which we will certainly be able to do this year if all of those distancing and mask wearing restrictions are not lifted. The problem for us is with town-sponsored events, we have to make sure that we can enforce all of the rules around social distancing and mask wearing. And I'm sure you can understand that to put on a parade that has thousands of people, both in the parade and attending the parade, to do that kind of enforcement is probably unrealistic. I'd like to shift for a few minutes to talk a little bit about what's happening at the federal level. Trying to do the math on federal stimulus, we have now seen $5.7 trillion in federal government spending authorized during the pandemic. Most recently with the American Rescue Plan of $2.2 trillion that we will soon be seeing the financial benefits of. The American Rescue Plan money will be distributed. It was approved on March 11th. The Treasury has 60 days to distribute the first tranche of that funding. It's going to be distributed in 2 tranches across the country. We will expect guidance on how exactly the monies that will be flowing to municipal government will be able to be spent sometime just before that distribution. So we don't know, but the idea with that money is to really help cities and towns, regional governments and state governments to recover from the impacts of the coronavirus. The town of Darien is expecting to receive at the municipal level just over $2 million. Our school district will receive just under $1 million as a direct distribution from the American Rescue Plan funding. There's also some additional monies that for states that have county government, which we do not, there's funding that's going to go directly to those counties, but our federal delegation was successful in getting that sum of money to come into the state of Connecticut for further distribution to cities and towns We don't know what that amount of funding will be, but it would be in addition to the $2.1 million that we're expecting to receive. We're likely going to convene a group of people here in town to thoughtfully deliberate on how to distribute those funds. It will come with guardrails. You can't use the funding, for example, to offset budget increases, but you can use it for economic development. You can use it to support your small businesses, I believe. You might be able to use it to help nonprofits. So eager for more guidance around that so we can make a plan here locally. Interesting, our cities who've been very hard hit through the coronavirus and who were struggling financially before that are really receiving a federal windfall in the ARP funding. Hartford, New Haven are receiving almost $100 million each, followed by Bridgeport, Waterbury, and New Haven, who are going to receive about $500,000 each in this distribution. There's another federal program right behind it called the American Jobs Plan. That's another $2 trillion to be spent over the next 10 years to fix transit infrastructure, to help with clean drinking water initiatives, renewing our electricity grid, better deployment of high-speed broadband, housing initiatives, investments in our caregiver community, revitalizing manufacturing. It's a very broad-based jobs bill. So I know that with the close relationship that Governor Lamont has with President Biden, Connecticut will be a large beneficiary of that $2 trillion in the next decade. Along with that, though, will come the American Corporate Tax Plan, which is a new tax plan to tax corporations at a higher level to quote unquote have them pay their fair share. It's the way the American Jobs Plan is going to be funded. So, you know, a little bit of an offset to the excitement of that jobs initiative. In terms of what's available for small businesses here in Darien, Teresa, maybe you can tell me, I don't know if you've had Christine Sullivan come and talk with you, or maybe she's a member of HAYVN. Has she come to speak with you yet?
Yes, correct. She's a member of HAYVN and she does regularly update our members on what's happening.
Perfect, perfect. She's really my go-to resource for things that small businesses in Darien can take advantage of. I know PPP loans are still available until the end of May 31st. So if you haven't gotten your first PPP loan or are looking for a second drawdown, make sure that you arrange to do that for your business. There's also something called shuttered venues grants that are available for things like museums and theaters and live music or entertainment venues. Aquariums are also included in that. And as I said, we are anticipating that the ARP funding, there might be ways that we can use that to help our local small business. We've been in some early discussions about whether we can create a grant program, a small grant program for local small business. So I promise to keep you posted on that. Just a few quick minutes on the really important issues that are being debated in the legislature right now. They're in a virtual world in Hartford, so legislators vote from their offices in the legislative office building. They don't convene together on the floor of the House or the Senate. All of the public hearings are done via Zoom. I participated recently in a Zoom that was one of their record-breaking public hearings. It lasted for 24 hours. Over 360 people were signed up to testify, and they only got to, I think, not even 200 people in that 24-hour time period. But you know, the beauty of Zoom testifying is that you can do it from the comfort of your home or office. So the big initiatives to follow, and just from a procedural standpoint, most of the big committees in the legislature have finished their committee work, all of the public hearing work. The only committees that are still working on that process are the ones that relate to the state budget. A $21 billion state budget proposed for the next biennium. But some of the key issues that are being debated this year are the legalization of online gaming and gambling, the legalization of recreational marijuana, which will likely pass this year because Massachusetts and New York have just passed that. So it certainly would be a disadvantage to Connecticut in many ways. Personally, I have great concerns over the legalization of recreational marijuana, but from a policy and revenue perspective, I see that that will likely pass. They're debating the imposition of a statewide tax on real property. So we know in Connecticut that we pay our local property tax to our municipalities, who then in turn uses those monies to fund local services, education, fixing our roads, parks and beaches. The state is thinking about tacking on an extra 1 to 2 mills onto the mill rate that would be collected at the state level and used for statewide initiatives. There is a big push, and the public hearing that I testified on was some sweeping change to zoning and housing regulations, essentially changing the rules of creating your zoning regulations at the local level and having the state create zoning regulations that would alleviate local involvement in building more dense housing around our commercial corridors and our transit centers. So as you might expect, I'm a fan of local control. We've done a great job in Darien over the last 20 years. We have built over 900 units of multifamily housing in that time period. And we've been able to spread it out through our community. 32% of that housing that we've built in the last 20 years is at the affordable level that meets the state mandate. We're still shy of the 10% of housing stock mandate. We've got 7,100 housing units here. Only 3.5% of our total housing is at the state affordable level. But we are doing a great job here in Darien with the regulations that we have in place. So hoping that the state won't impose those further mandates that don't let the local residents have a say. They're looking to eliminate religious or non-medical exemptions for vaccines. They're debating a public option for healthcare and focusing on new initiatives for workforce development and apprenticeships, which I think is a really wonderful and worthwhile endeavor. Locally, our Board of Finance just approved a $152 million town budget. That is going to set a mill rate of 16.84 mils. It's a little over a 3% mill rate increase. I don't know if you're following this stuff at all, but last year I requested and we were able to achieve a 0% mill rate increase. So this year is a little bit of a catch up on things that we've deferred over the last year. I think you want a couple of project updates. The Corbin District, the Baywater Properties, is moving forward. Shovels are already in the ground for some of the infrastructure around that project, but you'll be able to see some more notable development activities in May of this year. There's a housing development that's associated with the Corbin redevelopment called East Lane. It's this super unique, and you probably already heard about it, housing for the developmentally disabled on East Lane, not far from your office building here in Darien, and that development is well underway. Federal Realty will be finishing, believe it or not, phase 1 of their redevelopment. The new Walgreens should be open within the next couple of weeks, and then they'll be on to phase 2, which is their mixed-use housing and retail piece of their development. And the Palmer development is a little bit slower. We're still very hopeful that that will get underway at some point soon, but we really don't have a date certain yet on when that will get underway. You know, I've said a lot. It's 12:28. I know everybody's time is important. So I think with that, I'll stop and I will ask you if there are any other questions or particular concerns that you have that I might be able to help with.
Thank you so much, Jayme. That was really, really informative. As always, I have a couple of questions, but I wanted to put it out there to the people on the call if there are any specific questions.
Jayme, Steve Hardy here. More of a, not a small business question necessarily, but more of a residence question. You touched on the local zoning issue that Hartford is trying to push through. What's your sense of the success of that? Do you think that they have the means and the support to actually push that through? It seems that it would be quite detrimental to everything that you've achieved here in town.
It's a really good question. The political makeup of the legislature now suggests to me that whatever initiative the governor will support will go through. It's really a matter of whether the governor has, the political courage to make those decisions when the bills get to his desk. I will say that this isn't just a Connecticut issue. If you followed the presidential election, there was a significant initiative in the Biden-Harris agenda for housing and zoning reform. I think that there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, maybe today or yesterday, on this very topic. So I think what you're seeing here in Connecticut is a reflection of what's happening nationally. One of the concerns that I have, and one bill that's still alive up in Hartford, is something that's being pushed by the Open Communities Alliance called the Fair Share Plan. And it has been enacted in the state of New Jersey. And not to get too wonky on everybody here today, but we're living under a state law called 8-30G that says that all towns, except cities are exempt, all towns should have 10% of their housing as affordable as defined by the state. This fair share plan would increase that to 20%. 20% for us is, just shy of 1,300 units of affordable housing. That may sound like a laudable goal. I think housing affordability is, in fact, a laudable goal. But I look at how to solve that problem from a completely different perspective. I'd like to make sure that we're creating a business environment in Connecticut that incents businesses to come here, to grow jobs, higher wage paying jobs, the very jobs that we lost in 2007, 2008, so that people could themselves afford different housing choices. I don't quite know where Darien would build 12 or 13 units of affordable housing. We could do it, and if we did it, Darien would be different. It would feel different, it would function differently. I think traffic was an issue. It would be exacerbated with that. So I am truly trying to keep an open mind. I think the way we're doing it currently is working. And I really would love for the state to give us an acknowledgement of that fact.
Great, thank you. And I agree. I think you do some great work here, and we're heading in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jayme, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, no, okay. So one of the things that I see more than ever, and I always bring it up to you every time, is just, I see that now that we have so many more families that have moved into the area with young kids, and again, the need for daycare. So yes. I'm just wondering if there's been some more initiatives there, like what's going on in Darien and what's going on in the state level to help with that.
I love that we continue this conversation, Felicia. I'll never forget the first time that we met. I thought how incredible it would be if HAYVN was co-located right next to a child care center. And I certainly have continued those dialogues. There is one company that's very interested in the Darien marketplace. You know, I think COVID has honestly put a little bit of a pause on that, but there is no community that, in spite of COVID, the extraordinary redevelopment that's happening here, and the fact that the average age of Darien resident is 39 years old, and we have the highest number of persons under the age of 20 in the state of Connecticut. We are the town where childcare is desperately needed. So I'm really hopeful that you know, as we're moving out of COVID, that those conversations will restart. And to be honest, they could still be ongoing with some of the developers that are developing downtown and in Norotan Heights. Some of that work is done confidentially. So I'm fingers crossed that we will see some action on that.
I think Felicia, you're on mute. Thank you, Jayme.
You're welcome.
Any questions from anybody else on the call? Anybody on the phone?
I do. It's Lori. Hi, Jayme.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. I know you touched on some of the redevelopment projects going on in Darien, but I think I missed the part about Palmer's. Do you know what's going on down at the Palmer's redevelopment?
Yes, so we are very hopeful that they will restart their redevelopment project. Unfortunately, we don't really have a date certain about that. Again, a lot of the work that goes on with procuring financing and the like isn't really shared publicly. So we are confident that it will move forward. Feeling a little bit badly for them because, you know, they're kind of third in line when it comes to procuring tenants and whatnot. But I have some confidential information that there's some really good people that are helping that effort forward. So I think it's all going to be positive, just a little bit delayed.
Okay. So I have another question. I know you were talking about affordable housing, and I know several times David Genevieve had mentioned in his public comments, that he was going to have several units in his development as affordable housing. So do you think that other building projects, for instance, Palmer's, will have affordable housing?
Yes, so again, I'm just for 10 seconds going to get a little bit more wonky here. Every developer who develops 5 units or more of housing of any kind in Darien is subject to something called our inclusionary zoning regulations, which means 12% of those units have to be set aside at the affordable level. That's how we've actually been able to achieve so much affordable housing in our town, spreading it out through our town in different developments. So yes, the Corbin project, the Federal project, the Palmer's project, all have that required affordability component.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And any more questions? Amy, do you have any questions with regard to the state or further up in Ridgefield?
No, I thought it was really interesting. And I was curious myself about affordable housing, you know, and I'm sure it's similar in our towns, you know, because I'm a single divorced mom, and sometimes I wonder, like, how are people able to survive sometimes, right? Or get housing in our towns. And so I actually run a divorce and support group that is headquartered in HAYVN, Strong Savvy Women. And it's a question that's come up before. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. And I know that your first selectman, he and I have been in many meetings recently on this very topic, trying to find the best ways the most positive and productive ways to develop housing that's more affordable, while at the same time sort of keeping the integrity of our respective communities. He was deeply concerned about Senate Bill 1024, which was going to transform for the negative, particularly your very bucolic downtown Main Street. So we're very, very like-minded in that regard. And, you know, I think Darien has a great story to tell and lots of lessons that could be shared statewide.
Thank you, Jayme. I think Ben and Trudie, do you have any questions, or anybody else who we can't see your beautiful faces?
Thanks, Teresa. I think we've gotten lots of good information. Thank you, Jayme.
Thanks,
Okay.
Trudie.
I have one final question to close out on. I'm always in town buying a coffee or whatever, chatting to the businesses. And in Cafe Nero, they informed me that the town is soon organizing vaccinations for the people that work in the small businesses in town, which sounds like an awesome idea. Is that happening?
So I know that David Knopf, our health director, and his team are trying to reach out to certain populations of people. The one challenge that we have is the state sometimes will either allow or disallow us to have sort of, I'll call it a priority population clinic. And I don't know where that stands right now with the local businesses, but I know David is very mindful of trying to get vaccines to our frontline small business employees, to our grocery store workers. So we're doing whatever we're allowed to do by, you know, state rule to assist our local community in that regard.